If you're a Pontiac fan, particularly of the ultra-rare and seldom seen Can Am model that was available only in 1977, you'll love this feature. This is the same car we spotlighted in episode 48, but it has since been the recipient of a frame-off restoration. We have become close friends with owners Mike and Denise Lamberth and recently tagged along as Mike brought the Can Am out to California to meet the car's creator. Yep, the Pontiac legend himself, Jim Wangers. You'll see photos of us meeting Jim and having him look the car over. We're happy to say the car got the enthusiastic approval of the godfather of the GTO himself. Mike achieved these incredible results in his home garage. When you see the car, it's hard to believe that it was completed in about 1 year. And Mike works full-time. Except for paint, bodywork, graphics, and exhaust, Mike worked diligently and methodically to bring his car to this level. We know you'll enjoy seeing it in its present state. Now, let's go for a ride.
Hi everyone, Mike Lambert from Phoenix, Arizona. Back again with my 1977 Pontiac Can Am. If you've seen the first video of it, it'll kind of give you an idea about the car. I did notice that when I listened back to it, there was one mistake that I made, was that while there was 1,377 approximate cars made, my mistake was in this Pontiac book that I have, it clearly states that there was 1,130 something cars actually finished that became Can Ams. So again, if you ever get a chance to see this Pontiac book, it has a great story about this car, and it's from Jim Wangers and another associate of his that built these cars. So towards the end of the video, I said that my future plans were to do a full restoration on my car. And so shortly after that, I started doing the planning and to get this car restored. And so during that planning I visited many paint shops because I wanted to find the right person to paint it. Make sure they had a nice clean facility, make sure they had a nice paint booth, made sure that I could see their work prior to ever even thinking about starting on mine. And so months of visiting shops, I finally found someone, loved his shop, loved his paint booth, seen cars that he'd done, which were fantastic. So I said, okay, here's the guy. So again, brought the car home after visiting with him. In most paint shops that I visited, who are restoration shops, told me, we don't do cars this new. And most of them never even seen a Can Am before. They didn't know what the car was, so they weren't real sure. And so Dave, who painted my car, he goes, I've never done a car like this. He goes, it'd be kind of neat to do something different. So I told him, I said, I'm going to totally disassemble the car. I'm going to bring you the body, all the parts, the fenders, deck lid, hood, all that stuff. And then all you got to do is paint it. I'll bring it back home, put it all together. And he liked that because that's a lot of work that they didn't have to do. So during the process of disassembling the car, many pictures were taken to make sure that this car was put back together the same way it came apart. And during the process of taking the car apart, even though this car was originally from Minnesota, where it was purchased and sold, after I got the car apart, I was elated that this car was absolutely perfect. There was no rust holes. The body was amazing. So I was very fortunate that when I found this car, I found a car that was almost perfect as far as the body-wise. And the car had never been taken apart, never wrecked. Still has, almost everything on the car was original. It's just that, everything was, surface rust and, bushings were wore out and, and stuff like that that all had to be replaced. So the nice thing about that was it made taking the car apart easy, but the pictures made all the difference in the world. And then you start bagging and tagging and putting everything in together so that you know when you took the car apart, you knew how exactly it would go back together. So when I say I did a total restoration, this car was stripped down to absolutely every single nut and bolt and clip and line and brakes. The only thing left was the dash in the car. I didn't need to take the dash apart because there was no problem with the wiring, but absolutely every single part of that car came apart except for that. So when I say a total restoration, every inch of this car was taken apart. They took the frame apart, had it powder coated. Anything that could be powder coated to help it improve the looks, make it last longer, I did that. The transmission got rebuilt, the rear end got rebuilt. The engine I had already done prior, but anything that needed to be re-chromed got re-chromed. When you take a look at all the pictures that you'll see on this video, is that during the mid-70s, the country was going through the metric conversion. So even the plants were going through the changing over to metric bolts and nuts and all that stuff. And so for some reason on the Can Am, which is unique, that when the Can Am was built, all the metric bolts on this car were painted blue. So there are 100, 120, 25, 30 nuts and bolts and clips that were all metric, and they were painted blue so that when the car was being assembled down the line, the assembly workers knew which were metric, which were SAE, and so all the metric bolts were easy to identify because they were painted Pontiac blue. And you will see a lot of them on this car underneath in the engine compartment. There's a lot that you don't see because they're in the wheel wells or behind the grill, or they're on the gas tank, they're on the A-arms. I mean, it's crazy how many blue nuts and bolts are on this car. When I decided to restore this car, though I've made some slight improvements to the car, I tried to make sure that it went back as close to as original as it could possibly be. Slight improvements with them braking, shocks. Of course, I rebuilt the engine, got a little more horsepower. But when you look at the car, the 95, 96% of this car is back as it would have come from the plant. But the nice thing about this is it is nicer than it ever came back from the plant, because the details that I went through to restore this car makes all the difference in the world. So I guess when you restore a car, you got to decide how you want to restore your car. If you want to put it back original, you want to modify it, you want to resto mod, or you want to make a hot rod, that's what you got to decide. But in this particular case, this is a very unique, rare car, and I wanted to make sure that it got back as close as original as I could possibly make it. And the nice thing about having this particular car is it never was what we say molested, and still has the original radio, the seats, the engine. Everything on this car was as it came from the factory. It was just after 40 years, things get wore out. And so that's when I decided to, okay, I'm gonna bite the bullet and do this car the way it deserves. It does take a lot. So you got to find the right person to paint it. You got to find the right people to help you with it, because it's not something you can do by yourself. So you got to rely on family, friends, even some of my neighbors. I mean, the body and paint guy, he turned me on to the guy that did the powder coating. He turned me on to the guy that could take my glass out and put it back in the correct way. He turned me on to the guy that put all my decals back on. because that's quite a project. And again, I ordered all brand new decals to go on. I didn't paint them on because they didn't come that way from the factory. So once the car was painted, I had all the decals put back on. And I did have a goal to do this car. I give myself 1 year to totally do a restoration on it, which is pretty speedy. And I said, I'm going to get this thing done no matter what it takes. And so that's how we come about getting this car done. Anyway, I hope you enjoy my car. I am very happy how it turned out. And take a look at it and let me know what you think. One of my neighbors, you'll see his videos on here. He has all the Jeeps. He lives next door to me, and we had a running bet when I told him I was restoring my car, and he goes, "How long is this going to take?" I go, "I give myself a year," and he goes, "There's no way." And I said, "Yes, I'm going to have it done in 1 year." And he goes, "I'll bet you a case of beer." And I said, "Okay, no problem." So he brought me a case of beer over a couple weeks ago. I do work full time. I have a remodeling business. And in 2021 into the beginning of 2022, it was one of my busiest years. And so I worked full time and did this restoration. A lot of people goes, "Oh, you must be retired." And I go, "No, I have a full-time job. I work 60 hours a week remodeling, and then I still come home and work on this car." I worked on it some nights, but every weekend I worked on this car. The future plans is in August is going to the Pontiac Nationals. I'm going to start taking it to some of the bigger car shows around the country to see how I measure up with some of the other cars. I don't know how many other guys who own Can-Ams have actually gone to this extent, but by going to the bigger shows, I'll see if anybody else out there has done this. But so that's the future plans is for the next few years, start taking around the country and hitting some of the big shows.
We hope you enjoyed seeing the results of a frame-off, fully documented restoration of an extremely rare and desirable Pontiac from what is now commonly referred to as the Malaise era. Cars built from 1973 till about 1987. As a matter of fact, this year's Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals show in the Chicago area is highlighting a display of some of their finest examples of this era. Mike's stunning Can-Am is invited to display, and he has accepted. We've been asked to come along with our good friends as we embark on another automotive adventure. Of course, we'll bring it all to you sometime in December. Let us know what you guys think of this Can-Am, or of any of the Malaise era cars you have memories of.